Good evening. I hereby call this June 13th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. We have a lot of people who've joined us today. I will just kind of thank everybody for coming out. We have our Public Safety Committee, our City Manager, City Attorney's Office, led by Attorney Carmen. We have Mr. Mel Sadler with the Emergency Management Division, and I called you first on purpose today, Mr. Sadler. Also, our Fire Chief, Chief Mayo, our Police Chief, Chief Roundtree, and all of the city staff. We thank you again for being here. There are 5 general agenda items. There's an item recognizing the Winston-Salem Firefighters Combat Challenge Team. Item G2 is the American Red Cross Award presentation. We have a report on the Forensic Services Unit accreditation. There's a resolution amending the City-County Cooperative Government Services Funding Agreement, and we will have our annual review of the proposed fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. Items on the consent agenda are unanimously approved unless a council member wishes to be pulled for consideration. At this time, members of the committee, are there any such items that should be pulled for consideration? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So moved and properly second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposers likewise? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item G1, please.
Item G1, recognition of the Winston-Salem Firefighter Combat Challenge Team.
All right, and kicking us off with our recognition of the Firefighter Challenge Team is our Fire Chief. Chief Mayo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, other members of the committee. I'm happy to be before you again this afternoon to introduce the members of our Firefighter Combat Challenge Team. You saw them about 6 months ago after they had done so well representing the city, and they have done us proud again, if you will. I'll remind you that the Firefighter Combat Challenge is billed as the toughest 2 minutes in sports on May 20th and 21st at the Southeast Regional Firefighter Combat Challenge in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Our Combat Challenge team went and competed, and I'd like to call those members who are with us today to come up here and join me at the podium.
Please do.
That'd be Captain Ricky Brown and Captain Chaz Browning. Captain Dwayne Cheek is on vacation, as is Captain Scott Gaulden, then Captain John Pennington, and then retired from Everett, Massachusetts, Captain Bill Petrantonio. Also running with this team are Bruce Fields and Jesse Walker. Bruce is active duty with Greensboro Fire. Jesse is retired with Greensboro Fire. And also David Bowman from Charlotte Fire runs with this team as well. So those other 3 guys, they sort of run under the Winston-Salem flag, although they don't work for the Winston-Salem Fire Department. So the gentlemen you see before you here comprise a couple. So they put together a couple of teams, and the Firefighter Combat Challenges run typically by age bracket. So we have the team Tar Heel over 50, and they finished 3rd, but in the over 40 relay. So you have over 50-year-olds running against those in the 40 to 49-year-old. And I think you actually can run, if you're, what is that thing about being 49 and a half? Is right, so you can sandbag a little bit, and some of these guys, you look at them, you look at Captain Brown here, and his hair is gray, and then that one down there on the end, he doesn't have any left. You can tell those guys aren't sandbagging. We don't. In other words, we don't have anybody who's running in the over 50 team at 49 and a half years old. These guys are truly well in that age bracket, and they did well to finish 3rd overall. In the over 50 in the over 40 relay, running against people who could have been 10 years younger than they are. The team Tar Heel over 40. So we had 2 teams running in the over 40 relay. So that we had those 50-year-old guys, 50 plus, they won 3rd place, and then our 40 plus year olds, they actually finished 1st in that relay. So we claimed 1st and 2nd in that relay. And then Captain Petrantonio there, he and Jesse Walker, the retiree from Greensboro, they set a new world record in the over 65 tandem. So we're very proud of them for that. guy doesn't look anywhere near being over 65. We're not going to ask him how old what his age is, but he's holding up well, and it's because he stays active doing things like this. So I think the last thing I would point out to you is these guys completely volunteer their time, and we support them as the budget allows, but they do shell out a lot of their own money for gear and uniforms and travel and lodging and that sort of thing. So we are really proud of them, and I can't think of better ambassadors for the city of Winston-Salem and its fire department than these gentlemen right here. So I think we should give a round of applause. If that's okay with you. Thank you, man. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good.
Thank you, Chief. I always say, I say this about police, but I'm going to take the time to say it about fire because I mean it. We have the best fire department in the United States of America. And the work that you saw and the words that you heard was a true testament of that. And gentlemen, we appreciate you, and you truly bring honor to our city. So I commend you personally and on behalf of the committee. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? Councilmember McIntosh.
Just real quickly, if you want to see some of these challenges, you can go to YouTube and put in Firefighters Combat Challenge in Winston-Salem, and you'll come up with some of these things. They're great to watch. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anything else further?
No, sir. I'm waiting on the next item. I'm just going to stand by if that's
And
okay.
you look cool doing it, by the way.
Thank you.
Item G2, please.
Item G2, American Red Cross Award Presentation.
Chief Mayo.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call Susan Allred up. She's a representative who's here tonight from the American Red Cross. And also, if Captain Pennington will come up, he's double dipping tonight. And as they make their way up, I'll just tell you that having people on staff, and Captain Pennington's not the only one. We have a number of individuals who are motivated, self-starters, and quite frankly, they make me look good. And we are fortunate to have individuals like Captain Pennington. But I'll let Ms. Allred tell you a little more about the story.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Allred.
Absolutely. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Susan Allred. I'm with the American Red Cross. And I do want to thank Captain Pennington here for actually initiating our first annual Battle of the Badges this past December 22nd and 23rd. We're extremely excited to exceed goal and collect 117 units over those 2 days. Since one pint can save 3 lives, we're able to help 351 patients just with this one particular blood drive. So we're very excited to continue this tradition this coming December. But I did want to present Chief Mayo with the trophy here for this past year. And thank you so much for your support. And we can't do what we do without great folks like you.
Thank you very much. And again, the credit belongs to Captain Pennington and the folks who helped him. And when we finish the remodel of the Public Safety Center, we're going to have a trophy case outside the Fire Department administrative offices, and we'll put this alongside all the medals Captain Pennington and the other members of the Firefighter Combat Challenge team have won in their years of competition. So we'll display it proudly. Thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chief Mayo. Item G3, please.
Item G3, Report on Forensic Services Unit Accreditation.
And kicking off our report is our police chief this time. Chief Roundtree, you have the floor, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, Council Chairman Taylor, members of the Public Safety Committee.
Good evening.
I'm going to ask Supervisor Karen Watson to come forward. I am pleased to announce while she's making her way here that the Winston-Salem Police Department Forensic Services Division has been fully accredited by the American National Standards Institute, American Society for Quality National Accreditation Board. So I want to thank Karen, the entire Forensic Services Division for all of their hard work and commitment during this process. Just by way of background, since 2009, the National Academy of Science report, there has been discussion throughout the country to make forensic services units more accountable, meaning accreditation as a means to provide quality assurance by ensuring the methods are approved, personnel are properly trained, equipment and supplies are in working order, etc. Also, the state of North Carolina mandated with House Bill 27 that all forensic services laboratories, including police laboratories, or more commonly referred to as forensic inspections bodies, should be accredited by July the 1st of 2016. The Police Department Forensic Services Division is considered a forensic inspection body. We examine and we inspect crime scenes, evidence, and we provide forensic analysis in 3 specific disciplines. We do it in crime scene investigations, latent prints, and also firearm and tool mark examinations. On May the 9th through the 11th, the accreditation body came. They did an on-site assessment of our forensic services division. They found that we were in compliance with over 220 specific standards in all 3 of those disciplines. So at this time, I'm pleased to announce that we are fully accredited as required by the state of North Carolina. So I want to thank Karen again and her entire staff for all their hard work and dedication during this process.
You're here.
Anything you'd like to say?
No, I just have a great team working for me, and just a special thanks to Supervisors Tanisha Branch, Tanya Joyce, and Philip Seeks. They worked very hard on the project, and again, the whole team made it all happen, so I thank them as well.
Well, to Chief Roundtree, Supervisor Watson, we thank you for what you've done. And again, it's always good to stop and smell the roses. Once again, your work brings honor to our city. So we appreciate you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Burt.
Yes, I appreciate everything I've heard. I would like for the lady who is the fire lady to just introduce yourself, please. Are you with the fire department? Introduce yourself.
How are you
so
today,
that
madam?
the public can see you. I think it's wonderful.
Oh, hello.
Who are
Well, if you give us your name.
I'm Marlene Kasurka. I'm administrative captain with the fire department.
Very good. It was appropriate for this to happen. We've had 2 women just to see them with government. And not long ago, Mrs. Clinton made a statement that she wanted to really thank people before her, generations, for the efforts that women have shared and done. I've been in communication with the city manager, and when it's passed, we're going to start a pioneer wall for women who were the first women to do something in city government. And one lady, she passed a few years ago, Miss Ernestine Wilson. Her picture should hang in City Hall because she was the first woman to be elected. And she was the first woman finance chair. And she probably was the first woman mayor pro tem. And we want the council to really approve this, because if we don't show women and their capabilities, young girls will not have models and mentors to follow. And I appreciate you standing up introducing yourself. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments, Mayor Pro Tem Burt. I always say, as a married man, I know that women run things. I learned that a long time ago. Item G4, please.
Item G4, resolution amending the City-County Cooperative Governmental Services Funding Agreement to add consolidated city-county forensic services.
Giving us our background information on this item is our Assistant City Manager, Mr. Ben Rao.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor, Madam Pro Tem Burke, members of the City Council. The City and Forsyth County currently jointly operate a number of law enforcement functions. We've got the arresting processing at the Forsyth County Law Enforcement Detention Center, our evidence management operation, our indoor firearms training facility, our hazmat operation. So we've had a history of partnering with each other to provide certain law enforcement functions. Back in the fall, staff from both the law enforcement agencies and the budget offices got together to study the feasibility of consolidating forensic services. What the resolution that you have before you this evening would amend the City-County Cooperative Governmental Services Funding Agreement to add a consolidated forensic services unit as a city-county law enforcement operation. It would be administered by the Winston-Salem Police Department. Under the funding agreement, the county in the first year would pay 100% of the cost of the added cost to the operation, and what we've budgeted in the 16-17 budget is 5 additional forensic services technicians. That's basically the staff that that the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office has right now. That's about $344,000 that is added to the budget, that is covered 100% by the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, by Forsyth County. Currently we have 38 non-sworn positions. There will be a savings, so as county taxpayers, city taxpayers will realize the savings in the fact that the technicians in the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office are sworn positions, so typically a higher salaried, higher benefited positions than the non-sworn positions that we have in the forensic services unit. So there will be estimated almost about $94,000 in savings to the cost of this consolidated operation. So that is the action item before you. Going forward beyond the first year, we are going to collect data, track the workload of the new consolidated operation, because it will be servicing all of Forsyth County, to see how we might do the cost-sharing formula in year 2 and going forward, with the goal to make sure that there is an equitable split between the city and the county.
And Mr. Rao, these extra 5 positions, I don't know if I want to use the word extra, are actually included in the request for the 2016-17 budget. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And these positions are, for lack of a better term, subsidized by the Sheriff's Department.
That's correct.
I know a council member has some concerns about the number of positions that were being added, but we're not quite getting a true count because of situations like these.
That's correct.
I just wanted to make sure that we put that out for the record.
Yes,
Are there any, Councilmember McIntosh?
So from a personnel standpoint, there's a net gain to us of $94,000, is that right?
You have a net increase in positions. 5.
From a cost
From
standpoint?
a cost standpoint, no, there's no net revenue to the city. It's 100% covering the cost of the positions. So
We're shifting the cost of those, or sharing the cost of those personnel with the county.
well, in the first year, the cost of adding the positions and the equipment and everything, the $344,000, that's 100% covered by the county. So there's no net budget impact to the city by taking on those additional 5 positions.
But ongoing, we're on the hook for those personnel.
Well, ongoing, we're going to be looking at the formula to see, how the workload splits. But I think that our discussions will be, with the county, will be ensuring that those positions are covered by the city. By the county. And we just have to revisit that.
Currently, we receive revenue from the county for services. We charge for forensic work. I mean, do we do? We don't. Okay.
They have their own.
All right,
They have their
I'm
own.
concerned about the revenue side when this washes out, and will it be a net advantage to us in the long run? But since we're not receiving any revenue from the we're not giving that up.
No.
Okay. All right. That was my main point. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yes. I was going to ask, at the present time, tell us what we're doing with the county, how we're working with them with any other project.
Yes, ma'am. We have a number of law enforcement functions that we jointly operate. The indoor firearms training facility is run by the city, but we also have a fire training facility out in the county that the city does have access to. The way that arrangement works is we cover the cost of the indoor firearm facility, they cover the cost of the fire training facility, and it's really viewed as a wash. We do have our evidence management operation several years ago was consolidated, so that's also administered by the city at the Beatty Public Safety Training and Support Center. The arrestee processing at the detention center is also operated by the city. Actually, it's a unit within the forensic services unit that provides the arrestee processing technicians who do the intake when arrestees come. That is also shared between the city and the county. We do have a hazmat operation in fire that is jointly funded, but it is a unit within the Winston-Salem Fire Department.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. City Manager, what he has just stated, I think it will be good to have it in writing so the rest of the council people can see it. People didn't believe that we could do this much with the county, and we're now seem to be moving in a positive way, joining each other. And I would hope next year, when we got ready to look at this, that they will be willing to continue this relationship that we've started.
Mr. Garrity.
Mr. Ralph forgot about the radio system that we share with the county as well. This, I believe, is another step towards full consolidation of law enforcement. Over the years, what we've been doing is trying to do all of the infrastructure, all the support functions. As the community continues to grow, it really will make sense at some point to have a metropolitan police department and go to the model like Charlotte has, where the sheriff does the jail and does warrants and everything else is done by your metropolitan police. But these are first steps towards it, and the county's very supportive. Once this happens, Mayor Pro Tem, that they will have no choice but to pay their fair share because they won't have a lab or anything to do anything with. So,
Well, and I always say things I shouldn't say, but I'm gonna take a stab at it. I was really embarrassed to see how things played out in the media between the county and the city when it came to the airport. It was a really bad look. We did not sit down at the table and have discussions together. Once we did that, we were able to come to an amicable resolution. This is an example, and those are examples that were mentioned, of the city and the county working together to provide a high quality of service to our citizens. I think that's what people need to see. So I'm very excited about this. Thanks to the chief, to the manager, everybody who helped to make it happen, to the county, and this is us moving forward together. Councilman Blight, did you have any comments?
That's, as Lee said, I think this is a step in the right direction for a consolidated force, which will save all taxpayers money. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Last week when I was in Raleigh, I did thank the delegation for not interfering with what Winston-Salem and Forsyth County should be doing together. And we had a positive relationship there with them when we left. And also it was stated, if anything like this is going to happen, we need for them to talk with us. And we felt when we left there that they understood that. Because had they interfered, it would have created a lot of problems. But they knew to back off. And so talking about the relationship working together, it is positive since we in the city, we pay city and county taxes, and we're all want to work together.
We do. Members of the committee, this is our first action item of the evening. It sounds like the consensus is supportive of this item. If so, I would entertain a motion at this time.
move
Second.
Motion and properly second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposers likewise. That is unanimous. Thank you. Item G5, please.
Item G5, review of proposed fiscal year 2016-2017 public safety budgets.
All right, as Mr. Rao comes to the podium, every year we take the time in public safety to review how we deal with police, fire, and emergency management, and more recently, our SOAR reentry type of programs and community programs. Giving the presentation today, once again, we're hearing from our Assistant City Manager, Mr. Ben Rao.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. And I did fail to mention one other public safety function. Those are really what I was trying to list, not just law enforcement, emergency management.
Exactly.
And we'll be touching on that as well. For today's overview of the what we call them the safe and secure community budgets, because that is our strategic focus area, safe and secure community, I'm going to kind of tag team with Chief Mayo and Chief Roundtree as we go through the highlights of the three budgets. So to start with, just wanted to go review again the pay adjustments, because these do affect all aspects of the city organization, but in particular, there are some targeted adjustments for police and fire. So we have the public safety supplemental pay. This would be the second round of 2% pay adjustments for sworn police and certified fire, which would be effective January 1st, 2017. A 2% adjustment was approved in February, along with a 7.5% increase in minimum salaries. Secondly, we have in the proposed budget funding for a police officer retention effort. The adjustments would range from $1,200 to $2,300 for police officers and corporals. This is focusing on officers and corporals with 5 to 15 years of experience. The department has done an analysis, and they see that we are having challenges retaining officers within that range of experience, in particular about 7.5 years. So these funds would target pay for those particular officers. And then there is the general merit increase that is budgeted, the tiered 1.5% to 3% based on performance.
Mr. Riley, if you can just back up, I'll try not to ask too many questions, but it has to be asked. We've received a number of emails and correspondences from some of the officers who are senior, who were concerned about being here past 15 years, and they were concerned about not being affected by the pay increases. I want to say to those officers that we are concerned about you. We found where we needed to make the adjustments, and I think the council is considering making those adjustments. What would you say we have done to try to give considerations to those officers who are equally as important to us?
Well, they certainly are eligible for the public safety supplemental pay adjustment that would go into effect January 1st, 2%. And so, as well as the 2% that was approved in February. So that's 4% here within the last year that they would be eligible for. And then they have the merit increase on top of that.
Thank you.
Then the next one is a merit pay increase. This is 3% for all employees except sworn police and certified fire who are getting these supplemental pay adjustments. But this would impact our non-sworn, non-certified police and fire staff like the employees in the forensic services unit. And then finally, the proposal to add a new benefit, the 401A contribution, the 2% contribution that would be eligible for all employees except sworn police who already receive a 401K contribution. That would be effective January 1st, 2017, to give us time to educate employees about investment options and how the plan will work. This is a contribution. This is a defined contribution plan. So there would be a vesting requirement that after a certain period of time of employment, employees would then be able to access the funds. But we feel this is an important benefit. Compared to other large cities in the state, we're really the only one that doesn't offer this kind of defined contribution plan. So that's kind of the overview in terms of pay adjustments. I'm going to go over these quick highlights here and then turn it over to Chief Roundtree to talk about some of the more key highlights of the budget. So we've got in the budget a partial year cost for the district facility operating expenses, a little over $83,000 there. So that's for the 3 district facilities that will come online at various times in the upcoming fiscal year. This is utility costs, the cost of maintaining, cleaning the facilities, those types of expenses. And then we do have a significant amount invested in vehicle and equipment replacement, almost $618,000 in lease payments. So you multiply that by 5, that tells you how much total dollar investment we're going to make in replacing police pursuit vehicles, non-pursuit vehicles, equipment for the special weapons assault team, replacement radars, and computer replacements.
Councilman Blake.
Yes. What do you mean by times 5?
We finance the purchase of equipment over a 5-year period, so we only budget 1/5 in the budget.
Oh, gotcha.
So in terms of the total dollar amount of investment, you'd multiply it by 5.
Mr. Rell, I imagine we'll have surplus equipment.
Yes, sir.
How would that be sold?
Usually with our vehicles, it would be sold through an auction, and then the proceeds would come back. In this case, it would come back into the general fund.
Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Roundtree and let him go through some of the more specific highlights in the budget.
Chief Roundtree.
Good evening. Good evening again. How are you doing?
Well, I hope you are.
Good. As you see on this particular slide, there have been some challenges as far as our staffing, of course, starting with our recruiting, as well as in-service personnel, as noted by Assistant Manager Rao, with the incentives that are being put in place to keep our employees between the years of 5 and 15 years. That's the reason for the slide that you see here today. Some of the things that we're working on to increase our presence and also ensure that we have available personnel available for shifts. We are using a shift augmentation. That's pretty much where we are calling back employees to work additional shifts. Currently, because some of our shifts aren't fully staffed, we are using that feature to ensure that we have adequate staffing on all shifts. Also, for police recruiting, we're looking at different incentives. You see $310,000 on this particular slide. We're looking at some signing bonuses for police recruits. We're also looking at signing bonuses or payments for in-service personnel, whether you're sworn or non-sworn, to recruit police personnel. This is a thing that we did several years back. We're also looking at extending our current Bonner Red Surratt Police Scholarship that we currently have, that was started back in the early 2000s, but we're looking at expanding that to additional colleges and universities. We're also looking at expanding our recruiting market. We are using some digital media. We're using all the traditional recruiting methods as far as job fairs at universities, military bases, social media, print media, and also the regular TV media. But we're also expanding in some markets that we haven't really tapped into a whole lot, into some of our northern states, by doing some digital marketing and also doing some personal recruiting field trips. We're also looking at possible paying for some moving expenses. You know, if an individual moves here from Massachusetts or New York or wherever it may be, kicking in some funds to entice them to come here. And we're also looking at reinstating our cadet program. That was a program that was very successful about 15, 20 years ago, where we partnered with Forsyth Technical Community College. We had young people out of high school, and we paid for their associate's degree in basic law enforcement. Currently, we still have about 6 of those employees here working for the police department now that were hired about 20 years ago. That includes tuition, books, and also once they complete, they will be assigned to our basic law enforcement academy and then become full service police officers. Also, again, what was just discussed about the consolidated city-county forensic services, about $343,000. All these 5 positions will be paid or 100% funded by the Forsyth County. Currently, we have about 38 employees assigned to our forensic services division. These 5 employees will be immersed into those 38 employees, and it also will include 3 command vehicles in this cost. And I'm not sure if this is still in or not based on the based on the finance committee, but we were looking at increasing our crime analyst positions. These positions are very important. Anytime we forecast crimes, they work with our district commanders. They also work very closely with our citizens. We do get a lot of citizens requests for information about crime and data that's going on in their neighborhoods, particularly our community watch captains, neighborhood watch associations. So they're very busy doing work not only internally, but they do a lot of work externally, and they fill a lot of requests for you all as well about crime that's going on in your particular wards and also with the media. But those positions are very vital to the solvability of crimes, and again, they work very closely with our district commanders and our citizens as well. They also support a lot of the crime mapping. They do add some body camera support, and they also would be very useful in our new district police offices that will be coming online here real soon. And these are the basic numbers currently based on our population and the service population that we serve. We are currently understaffed in this particular area as far as the ratio of crime analysts based on the population. I think that's it.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Any questions on
Any questions for the
anything
Chief at this
that I
time?
went over?
Thanks, Chief Roundtree.
Thank you.
I'll make a comment.
Chief, if you hold on for one moment, please, Mr. Rao. Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
I'll make this comment. You know, we want to make sure that we put no dollar signs on it. And we won't know if you don't let us know what we need.
Well, and we always say we can't put a dollar sign to safety. And let me ask a question. Mr. Rao, maybe you can't give this to me now, but before the end of the meeting, there was concern in finance about the number of positions that will be added to the budget. Now, through conversations, we found out that 5 of those will be covered by the county. I'd like to know how many of those positions are included in the public safety budget, police, fire, and emergency management, which are necessary for the operation of city government. So it'd be good to note that.
We can certainly provide that. Actually, if you bear with me one moment, I can find that.
Mr. Rao, did you intend on covering the fire department's side of this?
I was going to do the just this first slide and then
Okay.
recognize Chief Mayo. In the proposed budget, we had 14 positions in police and 5 positions in the fire department. So a total of 19 positions between the two departments. Now, I will mention that one aspect of the presentation, you can see that we do not have the positions for the proposed 4th district, the 5 positions there. Part of the proposed staff change that was communicated to council was to delete those positions in order to fund this more aggressive police recruitment and incentive program. So we adjusted this presentation to reflect that, and one other adjustment was to eliminate one of the public safety information systems analyst positions.
So roughly 24 out of the 30 proposed positions are in public safety. Did I get that correct, Mr. Manager?
That would be 19.
You've got 19, so that's including the 5 from the consolidation from the 2 law enforcement agencies.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. There's 19 positions. 19 of the total 40 net positions would be in police and fire. 5 of those positions in public safety are 100% covered by Forsyth County.
Crystal clear. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next area is fire department. I'm just going to go through these 2 highlights and then turn it over to Chief Mayo to talk about some of the other kind of key highlights of the budget. So we do have increased funding in the fire department budget for supplies and services, some additional money for training, and Chief Mayo can elaborate on that, but providing a second set of turnout gear for recruits. That way all firefighter personnel have 2 sets of turnout gear. Funds for critical equipment and supplies, increase for more comprehensive physicals as part of really a focus on wellness. Funds for smoke alarms and stovetop fire stops as part of their public education efforts. And then in terms of vehicle equipment replacements, $520,000 in lease payments, again to replace a ladder truck, a pumper, and a hazmat truck, to finance replacement of their self-contained breathing apparatus, other personal protective equipment, computers, radios, mobile routers, other vehicles and rescue equipment. So really, here again, as was a theme of the budget, addressing a lot of our equipment replacement needs in the area of fire. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Mayo.
Chief Mayo.
May I ask a question?
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
The part that says reduce for the training, is that the same thing as
Increase funds for training.
for physical comprehensive training? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am. Increase for more comprehensive physicals.
Yes, now we have not been, what kind of training has been taking place?
So this, so that I'm clear, so you're talking about the 4th budget that says increase for more comprehensive physicals.
Yes.
So this is, so that's a couple of different things are reflected in that line. One is an increase from the vendor. You might remember we came to you some months ago and we wanted to stay with Mobile Doc, who is a local provider who has a relationship established with our employees. So the council approved that increase, and that's reflected there as part of that 52.9. And then the other part that is reflected is our response to a change in the standard to which our physicals have to meet. So the National Fire Protection Association publishes the standard for firefighter physicals, and those standards go through a review process every 5 years. So what we're doing is adjusting to the change in the standard, the update in the standard, if you will.
Any questions? Answer, Mayor Pro Tem Burke. Thank you. Chief Mayo.
So the other things you see there, the increase in training, that part of that is to bring some outside vendors in to do career development and leadership training for us. The the critical equipment and supplies will go toward increasing our readiness, particularly for those occurrences where call volume is expected to be beyond just what we see, you know, in day-to-day operations, the snowstorms, tornadoes, supercell thunderstorms, those sorts of things. Then down and under the second bullet, so and to address the amount for lease payments, I would let you know that we have 10 pieces of frontline apparatus that have more than 100,000 miles. We have 5 pieces that have over 125,000 miles. So when you consider what a fire truck does, it's always loaded. It's not like a dump truck that gets a break. You know, a dump truck's unloaded half the time. A fire truck is always, we carry a full load of hose, a full load of water. It never gets a break. And when you think about the short trips that they make and the idle time that they have running lights, running generators, running pumps, when you see a fire truck that has 100,000 miles on it, it probably has 250,000 miles worth of abuse on the engine from the way that a fire truck is used. So we certainly appreciate the support in getting our fleet, getting some of those replacements taken care of.
Chief.
Can I stop here?
Mr. McIntosh.
I raised the question in the Finance Committee meeting about us looking at refurbished equipment in the IT sector. And I know there are companies that are accredited to do refurbished fire apparatus. Did we look at those things? Have we made a foray into that? I know in the past, I think we actually have done some of that.
We did. Matter of fact, I can't remember if Scott did it for us or if the data analysts that we're currently sharing with the police department did it for us. Maybe they did it in tandem, but we looked out 30 years and we could not show more than $100,000 or $200,000 difference in money over 30 years' time doing refurbishments versus replacements. Really, the only place you get a lot of bang for your buck, and I've kind of gotten educated on this, is with ladder trucks. We can harvest that aerial device and put it on a new cab and chassis and realize $150,000 to $200,000 in savings on that apparatus. But for pumpers, there's really not much savings to be had.
When you go to bid in your arena, you probably have multiple people offering equipment to you. In the IT sector, I just get a little miffed when I only see one vendor that can do the bid. Right.
Well, there are, I've never counted, 12 or 15 fire apparatus manufacturers in the country.
There's more incentive on the vendor side to
yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
We beat them up pretty hard. Good. I wish Chief Stowe was here. He could tell you about it.
And Chief, one additional question while we're paused. When you say frontline apparatus with at least 100,000 miles on them, are you referring specifically to fire engines or other fire vehicles as well?
No, when I say apparatus, I'm talking about what I refer to as the heavy fleet. That's the red paint and chrome, the ones that are in service every day. We have the frontline fleet, and then we have a reserve fleet. So when a frontline apparatus goes down for maintenance or repair, we have 4 or 5 reserve apparatus that we can bring up and substitute for that frontline apparatus. But what I was talking about was actually the frontline apparatus.
Thank you, sir.
And I think the last thing probably that you'd be interested in here is about the personal protective equipment. We have 94 sets of turnout gear, structural gear that will be going out of date this year. So a set of structural gear is $1,600 to $2,000 depending on exactly what you get. So a significant amount of money there. The next thing I'd like to just remind you, you've seen this twice about our proposal to, you've actually seen it 3 times, 2 in this venue, once in front of full council. But our proposal to alter the way we perform fire code inspections and enforcement. And I would just remind you that in short, the operations division is just simply bogged down by code enforcement activities. And this is potentially, I would say this is probably the single most critical initiative that has been proposed since we dismantled the public safety department in the late 1980s. It just stands to have such a monumental impact on the safety of citizens and of firefighters, and on the effectiveness of the operations division and the code enforcement division, because the way we are doing it now is preventing both divisions from realizing their maximum effectiveness. And we certainly do want to remind you how important of an initiative this is. One of the new positions, I'm sorry, this is different. I had the wrong chart in my mind. So this just shows you what would happen in this 3-year proposal for the Operations Division to shed its inspection workload and for the Fire Prevention Bureau to pick it up, showing that in fiscal year 19, at the beginning, or sometime during fiscal year 19, that inspections workload would come completely off the Operations Division and would go completely on the Fire Prevention Bureau.
Councilmember Light.
And how, how many extra inspectors will we need over that time frame?
1 per year for
One
3
per
years.
year.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right.
So the next thing I have for you is the Shift Safety and Training Officer Program. So this is the anchor for what I just talked about with improving operations and Prevention Bureau inspections, that program. So as we unload the Operations Division, we need to have the capacity to utilize that time that we have freed for them to get fire, medical, and technical rescue training that they are either not getting now because we don't have the capacity in terms of staffing, or that they don't have the time for because their non-emergency workload is so great that they're just, that's all they do all day long is from one business to another doing inspections. So this also would take, so remember, this is critical. So we're asking for a total of, we have 3 now. We got 3 in the budget that we're currently in. You all approved that last year. We're asking for 3 more for a total of 6. But remember, we run a 3-shift system, so only 2 of them are working at one time. 4 of them are off. So not all 6 are working together. But this will allow us to realize the synergy of having 2 on a shift. You know, now when we have those positions work on a special project, building, training, etc., they sort of have to get together. With 2 of them being off, 1 of them being working. With 2 on a shift, they can be working that synergy and working on 3 simultaneous projects with the 2 positions that are on shift together at the same time, working whatever that program is. And I will tell you that we are the 4th department in the state that has moved to this Shift Safety and Training Officer program. It is regarded as being quite innovative, and I will tell you that we are the largest department that has done it, and we are the only non-accredited department that has done it. So the other 3 accredited agencies, just to give you some idea of where we are in terms of staffing, Rocky Mount is the smallest. They have 7 stations, 3 shift safety and training officers, same as we have now. Asheville has 14 stations. They have 6 shift safety and training officers. Durham, 16 stations. They have 6. So we are asking for 6, which I don't think is beyond what we can reasonably justify. And I would just tell you that our neighbors to the east, Greensboro, they don't run this system, but with 25 stations, they have 9 personnel dedicated to the training division. And I think this is self-explanatory, and when you consider what you see here with the number of apparatus per mechanic, coupled with the fact that I told you we have 10 pieces of apparatus in the frontline fleet with over 100,000 miles, I don't believe I need to elaborate on that anymore, but I'd be glad to. You know, I can stand up here and talk as long as you want to listen. But that's all I have for you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be certainly glad to entertain any questions.
No questions at this time, Chief. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Rao?
So I failed to mention that one more tag team partner is Mel Sadler, who will give you a brief overview of the emergency management budget.
Mr. Sadler. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. I think out of the three, we hear from you the least. So you take as long as you want. I'm getting side eyes from the council members.
Good evening,
Good
Chairman
evening.
and members of the committee. Actually, I just have about 30 seconds to talk about this. Our needs are being met right now. We're moving, and we're going to have some further action later on, but at the current upcoming budget, all we need to do at this point is replace one. We have one vehicle that needs replacement, which is way over 100,000 miles, and its repair costs are just getting to be outrageous. So we want to replace that. We probably will be coming back at some point later on for some discussion in regard to our move, but we haven't gotten the full timing on that, schedule on it rather, and so we can't really say exactly when that's going to happen. We do want to thank you for last year's recommendation for the Web EOC software, which has been a godsend for us. This was actually in last year's the current year's adopted budget. And we're working with the vendor and with the IS department now to get that implemented. It requires some background work and some other instrumentation before we can get it going, but we're in the midst of that now. So that's my 30 seconds. All right, any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Sadler?
Each time
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
thank you. I always ask Mr. Sutherland, if we were to have something terrible to happen, are we ready?
Yes, ma'am, we believe we are.
You know, it's sad when people come in and tear up cities, and then what happens to the residents in a particular city. So I ask you again, are we ready?
And my response is yes, ma'am, and we believe that we are.
All right. May I say something?
Please do.
We got a letter, and I handed it to the Winston-Salem city manager, and the lady was asking us to do certain things as far as providing for folks who are in need. And we one time talked about if we had an emergency, then we would try to have some facility where people who were going to be homeless or things that was happening, we could take care of them as a city. But if we're not having an emergency, this lady, did y'all get that letter? Where she was asking for us to provide a place to stay, to provide food. And I felt at this particular time there's a difference in providing for emergency of the nature we talk about than the kind that she talked about. Would you just describe it?
She was talking about citizens in crisis, a combination of housing or other reasons where they've lost, and they need that emergency shelter. I did send that on to Mr. Page to provide a response, and working with Mr. Brooks, but they haven't finished that yet. But it's a little different than that. There's an individual crisis of an individual, very serious, but individual crisis versus what Mr. Sadler deals with, which is more of a community emergency.
Yes, I just wanted that because just in case she was listening, it was during budget time, and I would bring it up. Your emergencies provide different kind than what she was asking for.
Yes, ma'am. I'm not familiar with that particular letter, but it sounds like non-disaster assistance as opposed to what we do.
Yes, and I think hers would probably go more to the county.
Yes.
The county provides more of those social kinds of things to
Yes,
take care
ma'am.
of the residents. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sadler.
Sir.
It looks like our final components to deal with our safe and secure communities is the successful outcomes after release program, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. And Mr. Rao?
Yeah, so the city manager's proposed budget actually included $200,000 for successful outcomes after release, $150,000 for the city's job reentry program where we hire graduates and place them in city departments, and then also $50,000 in grants to community agencies that were reviewed by the Community Agency Allocation Committee. You can see the second bullet there, how that $50,000 breaks down: $20,000 for Eureka Ministries, $10,000 for the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, $10,000 for Self-Empowerment Lasts Forever, and $10,000 for the Holly House. But as was provided by the city manager, one of the proposed staff changes is to add an additional $50,000 in SOAR contingency funds that would be recommended for allocation after a review by internal committee, an internal city committee, look at some additional applications or needs there, and then submit it to the city council for approval during the early part of the next fiscal year. So actually there would be a total of $250,000 and program funding for the SOAR program.
And members of the committee, I'll state very briefly, a couple of weeks ago, we hosted a community roundtable discussion to talk about ways we could reduce violence and promote community progress. And there were a lot of groups and people who came up and said, you know, we'd like some support from the city, who did not ordinarily receive monetary support from the city, who provide valuable services to our community. Hopefully we can use some of those resources and contingency to support those who are not funded, who do work in our community, to continue to find ways to decrease violence in our community, which is something that's very important to all of our neighborhoods and communities. Anyone wish to be heard on that? Mr. Rao. Mayor Pro Tem.
I will say, if we're really serious about reentry and what we talk about, then we show by investing. And I think we're moving more into a concrete, positive way of working with reentry, Mr. Chairman.
Agreed.
And committee.
Mr. Rao.
And the final slide is just to provide an overview of the capital budget for public safety. So the CIP includes $3,010,000 in total costs for fire apparatus replacement that Chief Mayo just reviewed, and then also $200,000 for renovations of the kitchen at Station Number 5. Overall, over the 6-year period, we show a little over $8.6 million in investment for fire apparatus replacement and almost $800,000 for facility maintenance and upgrades based on our regular facility condition assessment. So this is major maintenance that we'll fund through probably a funding source like 2/3 bonds. So you can see there the table at the bottom of the page that provides the 6-year picture there for those two capital needs. The remaining slides, and I'm not going to go through those, but it's more of a just information for you, but it lists out all of the public safety equipment that is included for replacement in the budget. So you can see there the actual projected cost of the item, and then what the lease payment, the 1/5 payment that's actually reflected in the budget. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. As we do in finance, we would just take a quick moment to go down the line and see if there are any questions or concerns in the public safety budget as it relates to this year's budget. We'll start with our left and work our way to the right. Councilman Light, do you have any questions or concerns at this time?
Yeah, just on your final pages, does this include I don't see it here, but as I say, I haven't looked at it closely, the personnel additions? Or
This does not. This only includes the capital outlay.
Yeah, okay, all right.
We're good to go, Councilman Light?
Yes, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
No, I don't have.
Mr. McIntosh.
My questions have been answered on other committees.
All right. Mr. Manager, anything further? Mr. Rao? Appreciate the presentation. That includes, that ends item G5. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Anyone else wish to be heard at this time? Seeing nothing further, we'll consider this meeting to be adjourned.